She stood nervously under the bright stage lights, gently rocking her baby as the crowd whispered. Then she looked at the judges, her voice trembling, and said softly, "Can someone please hold my baby?" No one expected what would happen next, because the moment she sang, even Simon Cowell felt his eyes fill with tears. Before the lights, before the music, before the world knew her name, there was only a young mother and the quiet rhythm of her baby's breathing. Backstage, she stood in a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of coffee and nerves, gently swaying from side to side. Her arms had learned this motion long before they ever learned applause. Rock, breathe, whisper. Rock, breathe, hope. She hadn't always imagined her life this way. Once, she dreamed in melodies and stages, not diaper bags, and borrowed lullabies. But life had other plans that arrived early, fragile, and entirely dependent on her strength. Becoming a mother didn't erase her dreams. It simply taught her how to carry them quietly, tucked between responsibilities and exhaustion. Most nights, sleep came in fragments. Her baby would stir, and she would rise without complaint, humming softly in the dark. Singing had become a survival tool, a way to soothe her child and herself. In those moments, her voice wasn't meant for judges or crowds. It was meant for one tiny listener who trusted her completely. Money was always tight. There were months when she chose groceries over bus fare, and pride over asking for help. She learned to smile through uncertainty, to tell herself that love could fill spaces where security was missing. Every sacrifice became a promise whispered into her baby's hair. "I will try. I will not give up." Okay? The audition day began before sunrise. She dressed carefully, choosing simple clothes that felt honest, nothing flashy, nothing borrowed from a dream she hadn't yet earned. She packed diapers, wipes, and a small bottle, checking twice, like this performance depended on it. In many ways, it did. As she waited her turn, she watched others rehearse, young, confident, unburdened. Doubt crept in quietly. "Do I belong here?" she wondered. She looked down at her baby's peaceful face, the tiny chest rising and falling. And the answer came without words. She wasn't there despite being a mother. She was there because she was one. When her name was called, her heart raced. The hallway opened into a stage glowing with bright, unforgiving lights. Applause echoed, faintly, distant, and unreal. She stepped forward slowly, feeling the weight of every step, not fear, but responsibility. This wasn't just her moment, it was theirs. She paused before the judges, adjusting her grip, her baby stirring slightly in her arms. In that moment, she wasn't thinking about winning or fame. She was thinking about opportunity, about proving to herself most of all that dreams don't disappear when life gets hard. Sometimes, they just wait for courage. And as she took a deep breath under those lights, the world saw a contestant. But inside, she was still just a mother standing. The edge of hope, holding everything she loved. The moment had come. She had rehearsed this hundreds of times in the quiet of her small apartment. But nothing could prepare her for the split second she actually had to hand her baby to a stranger. The stage loomed ahead, bright and intense, with cameras capturing every twitch and whisper. Her baby, wrapped in a soft blanket, nestled in her arms, stirred and let out a tiny, innocent squeak. She felt the familiar tug of worry in her chest. Backstage, there was a volunteer. A kind-looking woman with gentle eyes, ready to help. She had been through similar moments herself, and her calm demeanor radiated reassurance. The mother hesitated for only a moment before placing her baby in the woman's arms. For an instant, everything seemed to freeze. The heartbeat of mother and child synced in silent agreement, a fragile trust passing between them. It was more than just a logistical necessity. It was a declaration of courage, To release her baby, even for a few minutes, recruit faith she didn't know she possessed. She looked into the volunteer's eyes, searching for assurance, and found it reflected back in warmth and understanding. "I will keep your little one safe," the woman seemed to say without words, and it was enough as she stepped away. The weight of the world seemed to lift just slightly from her shoulders, but a new tension replaced it, a nervous excitement. Every step toward the stage reminded her that she was standing on the edge of her dream, yet tethered to her responsibilities as a mother. Her mind raced. What if I falter? What if I disappoint everyone? And then she remembered her baby's tiny smile just moments ago, and a surge of resolve filled her. The audience could sense it. The air seemed charged with anticipation. The act of handing over her child was so small, so human, yet it created a ripple that touched everyone present. It was an unspoken story. A mother willing to trust, to step beyond fear, to believe in something bigger than herself. The room grew quieter, not because they were told to be, but because empathy had a way of commanding attention. For a fleeting moment, she looked back. Her baby's little hands reached out, as if recognizing her courage. She offered a reassuring nod. The volunteer smiled and whispered softly, "You've got this." And just like that, a bond of trust transformed into invisible wings. Carrying her forward, as the music began, she felt a clarity she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't performing for judges, cameras, or critics. She was performing for life itself, for the countless nights she had whispered lullabies, for every sacrifice she had made, and for the unshakable love that had brought her here. The stage was no longer intimidating. It was a bridge between her struggle and her hope. And in that simple, quiet act of trust, something extraordinary happened. The audience, the judges, and even the crew backstage felt the power of vulnerability. The courage it takes to let go, and the purest form of love, expressed through a mother's faith in humanity. That moment, small and intimate, set the stage for a performance that would touch hearts far beyond the walls of the theater. She was ready, her baby was safe. And in that trust, her voice found its wings. As the first notes of the piano echoed across the stage, she felt the adrenaline spike through her chest. Her hands, once trembling with nerves, now gripped the microphone with quiet determination. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the countless nights spent singing lullabies to her baby, her voice carrying love and hope into the dark corners of a tiny apartment. Tonight, that same voice was about to meet the world. The spotlight was blinding, but she didn't flinch. Every person in the audience became secondary to the task at hand. She had to sing not just for herself, but for the life she had built and the sacrifices she had made. The microphone felt like an extension of her heart, carrying every fear, every joy, every sleepless night in its sound. Her first note came out shaky, fragile, but it carried truth. And truth has a way of demanding attention. The room leaned. People who had seen countless auditions, who were accustomed to polished performances, suddenly felt the weight of something far more authentic. It wasn't just talent. It was honesty, vulnerability, and the courage of a mother who refused to let her circumstances define her dreams. As she continued, the voice strengthened, rising and falling like waves shaped by years of struggle and resilience. Each note told a story, of late nights spent comforting a crying child, of skipped meals to make sure her baby had enough, of whispered prayers for strength. The music intertwined with her life, and suddenly, it wasn't just a performance, it was a living testament to endurance, love, and hope. Simon Cowell, known for his composure and critical eye, sat forward in his chair. His expression, usually unreadable, began to soften. There was a subtle tightening around his eyes, a deepening of focus as he listened. Something about the way her voice carried emotion, raw and unpolished, yet utterly captivating, pierced through the usual veneer of talent shows. It wasn't just skill, it was authenticity, the kind of unfiltered humanity that resonates universally. The audience was silent, captivated. Not a cough, not a murmur, just the pure, reverent stillness that precedes awe. Her voice climbed higher, each note stretching across the room, defying fear and circumstance. And as she hit the highest, most powerful note, there was a collective intake of breath. This was more than singing. This was storytelling, uniting strangers in a shared moment of emotional clarity. She opened her eyes and looked at the judges. For the first time, the lights reflected not just on her, but on the path she had traveled, the sacrifices, the small victories, the unwavering love she carried in her arms moments ago. Her baby, safely held backstage, had unknowingly lent her courage, a tangible reminder that she was never alone. As the final note faded, the silence that followed was deafening in its intensity. Hearts were racing, eyes glistening, and Simon Cowell sat with tears threatening to spill, a rare sight that spoke volumes. In that moment, it was clear. Her voice had transcended the stage, transcended competition, it had touched the core of human emotion. Her song had done more than entertain. It had reminded everyone watching of the power of authenticity, of vulnerability, and of the courage it takes to share your soul with the world. And in doing so, she changed everything, not just her own future, but the hearts of everyone who had the privilege to witness it. For a moment after the final note faded, time seemed to pause. The echo of her voice lingered in the air, not as sound, but as feeling settling into hearts that hadn't expected to be touched so deeply. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of emotion, as if everyone in the room needed a second to understand what had just happened. Simon Cowell sat unusually still. The man known for sharp critiques and unfiltered honesty stared at the stage, his expression no longer guarded. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. He blinked once, then again, as if surprised by the warmth gathering behind his eyes. Cameras caught at the rare, unmistakable shimmer of tears. Not from sentimentality, but from recognition. He had heard thousands of voices. Powerful voices. Perfect voices. But this one was different. It wasn't trying to impress. It wasn't asking for approval. It was telling the truth. And truth, when delivered with courage, has a way of cutting through every defense. Around him, the other judges felt it too. One leaned back slowly, hand over their mouth. Another nodded, eyes fixed on the stage, as if afraid to break the moment. In the audience, people wiped their eyes, strangers reaching for strangers without realizing it. Parents thought of their children. Children thought of sacrifices they had never noticed before. For a brief instant, everyone was connected by the same understanding. This was bigger than a performance. Simon finally leaned toward the microphone. His voice, when it came, was softer than usual. He spoke not as a judge, but as a human being. He talked about courage, about how life doesn't wait for perfect timing, about how rare it is to hear someone sing with nothing to hide. His words weren't rehearsed. They came from the same place her song had come from, honesty. As he spoke, she stood quietly, hands clasped, heart pounding. She hadn't sung to make anyone cry. She hadn't sung for sympathy. She sang because she had something inside her that needed to be heard. And in that moment, she realized something profound. Her struggle was not a weakness, it was her strength. When the applause finally erupted, it wasn't the loud, automatic kind. It was thunderous and deliberate, rising to its feet as one. People clapped not just for her voice, but for her journey. for the courage it takes to keep dreaming when life gives you every reason to stop. Backstage, the volunteer holding her baby felt it too. She hugged the child a little closer, smiling through tears, knowing she had witnessed something rare. This wasn't just a turning point in a competition, it was a turning point in a life. As the lights shone down and the applause continued, something shifted inside the room. Hope felt closer. Dreams felt possible again. And in that shared moment of tears and truth, everyone was reminded that the most powerful transformations don't begin with perfection, they begin with bravery. When the applause finally softened, she felt her knees weaken, not from fear this time, but from relief. The moment had passed, yet its warmth remained, wrapping around her like a quiet promise. She stepped off the stage and into the wings, where the noise of the audience faded into a distant hum. And there, waiting exactly where she had left them, was her baby. The volunteer smiled and gently placed the child back into her arms. The familiar weight grounded her instantly. Her baby blinked up at her, unaware of the tears, the standing ovation, or the lives that had just been touched. To that tiny soul, she was simply Mama, the voice that brought comfort, the arms that meant safety. She pressed a soft kiss to her baby's forehead, breathing in the scent she knew so well, feeling whole again. In that quiet backstage corner, the magnitude of what had happened slowly settled in. For so long, she had measured her life in sacrifices, what she had given up, what she had put on hold. Dreams had felt like luxuries, something meant for other people with easier lives. But now, holding her child, she understood something new. Chasing her dream was not an act of selfishness. It was an act of love. Crew members passed by, offering gentle smiles and whispered congratulations. Some thanked her, others simply nodded, eyes still emotional. She realized then that her story had reached beyond the stage. Somewhere in the crowd, a struggling parent felt seen. Somewhere at home, someone watching would believe, maybe for the first time, that their own dream was still alive. Later, when the lights dimmed and the stage emptied, her journey continued not as a winner or a headline, but as a woman changed by courage. Nothing in her life was magically fixed. Bills would still need paying. Nights would still be long. Motherhood would still demand everything she had. But now, there was something else alongside the struggle: belief. She rocked her baby gently, humming the same lullaby she had sung so many times before. Only now, the melody carried a different meaning. It wasn't just a song of comfort, it was a song of possibility. She imagined telling this story one day, not as a moment of fame, but as the day she chose herself, without letting go of love. As she walked out of the building and into the cool night air, she looked up at the sky. It felt wider than it had that morning. The world hadn't changed, but she had. She knew now that kindness, courage, and vulnerability could open doors fear never could. And somewhere behind her, the echo of that applause still lingered, not just in the theater, but in hearts across the world. A reminder that sometimes, hope arrives quietly, carried in a mother's voice, held in a child's arms, and shared with everyone who dares to believe. That night, as her baby finally drifted to sleep, she smiled through tired eyes and whispered the same promise she always had. Only this time, she believed it more than ever. Our story is just beginning.